So the media is always in the news because that's what it does. But when the media is the subject of the news, it can be a very thorny subject. One man who likes battling the thistles is Tim Burrows, the editor-in-chief of Mumbrella and Encore magazine. Tim, thanks for joining us on the program.
Hey Peter, how are you?
Yeah, now, if people haven't been to your website, it is a thorny website, isn't it? You just don't cover information. You do actually look at the gossipy things that are going on.
The media and marketing world is such an interesting world to write about as a journalist.
That's right.
So much happens.
And people love it.
Big personalities, big things happening, huge amounts of change happening.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, with those big personalities come the gossipy side, as you say. So as a journalist, you know, it's a real treat to write about that world because it's a fascinating one.
How many times have people threatened to sue you?
Do you know what? There have been a number of letters from time to time.
Yeah.
I'm glad to say that it's always been resolved at that point. I wish I had some wood to knock on right now because one always fears having to make that phone call to one's liable insurer. But happily, we're approaching the 5-year point, and so far it's ended civilly at the letters stage.
Okay. Now, what other things you do? You do look at the trends that's happening in the media, newspapers. How are they coping with their digital challenges?
Look, we're at a really interesting point where we're seeing the transition beginning now. You know, the major two publishers now, News Corp, was News Limited as we knew it before, and Fairfax, have both switched on their paywalls. We're probably at the stage where the people who absolutely adore those sites, you know, those early diehards have now subscribed.
Yeah.
So the question is, are we now going to see a steady growth, or have we seen the big initial surge? And the truth is we don't know. We're also seeing those publishers begin to work hard to persuade the advertising market that they have an audience beyond print that's worth investing in. So we're seeing the beginnings of new sort of media metrics, new means of selling to the industry what their overall readership is. So we've seen the launch of something called Emma, which is a sort of alternate to the long-running Roy Morgan survey, which has been around since the 70s, as an alternate way of saying this is what our readership is if you add up what goes on in print along with what goes on in digital as well.
Let me put you on the spot, because I know you're not an investment expert, but you are a media expert. Is Fairfax looking like a good bet for an investor?
Do you know, it is a really hard question, isn't it?
Well,
because
but someone has to answer it.
You know, if you look at the price, you know, I remember as a non-investment expert looking at it thinking, why don't they just give away a free share with every copy of the Herald? Because the share price is about a third of a copy of the Herald at the moment. The big debate becomes, is it a company that will at some point in the future be broken up, in which case that share price is probably a discount on what the breakup price would be.
Yeah.
The management, of course, have been very, very clear that that's not what they see the strategy as. So, of course, it's who gets the way. Is it, you know, one or two of the kind of minority shareholders? Is it the management? Now, we've seen a small amount of growth in the share price in recent weeks. You know, it's probably in line with media stocks generally, but yeah, certainly, you know, compared to a year ago, the sense of, you know, what the heck is going to happen next has maybe gone a little bit quiet. You know, it feels a bit of a steadier ship at the moment. You know, we've almost seen the focus switch from Fairfax to News Corp in recent weeks.
Okay. And News, it's split the companies up. Is there any one of those companies that you like better than the other?
Look, I mean, I guess like I'm an old-style journalist. I'm a newspaper romantic. So, you know, News Corp obviously locally contains most of the news assets, including the newspapers, including their investment in Foxtel, which we're speaking on now, obviously, including their investment in Foxtel.
That's a quality part of their assets.
Well, that's for you to say. As a neutral journalist, I can't possibly comment, of course. Yeah. But clearly, you know, what that's all about is, for News Corp versus 21st Century Fox, the Australian exposure is much more about News Corp. And what it does have is more diversified assets. You know, it has those television assets where there's probably still some growth to be had.
So 21st Century does look to have a whole lot of upside, as long as they make the right decision.
Yes, and in other parts of the world, obviously, as well, in particular.
10, how's it going?
A really long-term project. You know, they're still at the stage where they're having good days and bad days. You know, still very much in rebuild phase. You know, more than a year now of terrible ratings. turmoil, obviously, with the management. We're seeing a new sales structure is just beginning to come in.
Yeah.
Even in recent days, we're beginning to see how that will look. More of a focus on selling premium advertising, which is perhaps where they get some of their sales growth above audience share.
Yeah.
Couple of crucial moments coming up. We see the launch of The Bachelor in a week's time, so they're big.
That's a local show or an American?
That's a local version of an international franchise.
Yeah, right, okay.
This is a big one. They put a lot of investment behind marketing it.
Yeah.
They'll be hoping for great ratings. As we speak, last night it was the final of MasterChef, which was disappointing. You know, not much more than 1 million Metro viewers. 3 series ago, they nearly hit 4 million.
Extraordinary.
So you know, it's still a battle. It feels like they found a little bit of momentum. So,
but the breakfast one, is that the other one you're talking about?
Yes,
when does that start?
Breakfast yet to come. I get the sense that probably within the next 6 or 7 weeks. So we'll see Wake Up as the breakfast show. Then the mid-morning show is Studio 10. So suddenly there'll be a whole tranche of morning programming. Last time they tried it with breakfast, presented by Paul Henry, the Kiwi, woeful ratings. This time they've paid big. They brought in the professionals. Adam Boland, who was the mastermind of the success of Sunrise at 7, he's leading the charge. They brought in Rob McKnight to run Studio 10 for the mid mornings. Some decent presenters. It's then, can they find the chemistry and can they find a gap?
Yeah, and some people said to me, if I'm in Melbourne, how comfortable I will be looking at Manly Beach. Is that going to be an issue, do you think?
Do you know, it will be really interesting, won't it? Now, of course, Nuala Hafner, the newscaster, will be based in some sort of glass box in Melbourne.
Oh, okay.
So you'll answer the
serious
question,
stuff is in Melbourne.
But going beyond those 2 states, that's going to be the question. So there will be a roving reporter. They've just said in the last few days that's Sam Mack, again, a familiar voice to the 10 audience.
Yeah.
But yeah, the challenge for them is finding a point of difference and then persuading advertisers.
And this is Boland's big test, but if he pulls it off, by winning substantial ratings in breakfast, does it flow through to the rest of the channel, or do people turn off?
That's the thinking of it. And also some of it is, you don't even necessarily have to find substantial ratings. If you can find the right niche, then you can actually get some good niche advertising in there, particularly when it comes to sort of the advertorial style of mid-morning. So there's just some extra profit to be squeezed that probably 7 and 9 are getting unchallenged at the moment. So I don't think the thinking is, substantial is probably not even the thinking. It's just something competitive that nibbles into what 7 and 9 have and gets Tennessee to the table. I suspect that's all they're looking for.
So my last question to you is, if you had a few spare thousand, would you put it on Channel 10?
Do you know, I think anyone who invested in television at the moment, particularly traditional free-to-air television, would be quite brave.
A courageous decision, Minister, eh?
It would.
Tim, thanks for joining us on the program.
My pleasure.
Website?
Mumbrella.com.au.
Thanks, mate.